Hey everyone, Lisa here. Welcome back to another Venus-Mars reading. I think the last time I did any form of relationship reading on my channel was back in July of 2021 when we had that Venus-Mars conjunction in Leo. So I kind of thought it was high time to do another reading, especially given that we've got another two of these conjunctions happening in a row. The first one happening in kind of mid-February and the second in early March in Aquarius. The first one will happen in Capricorn actually. So quite an interesting one, that Venus and Mars essentially will be traveling very close to each other, and to Jupiter actually, for the next 8 to 9 weeks. And this will include Valentine's Day, so that's pretty cool. So yeah, I definitely thought it was time to do another of these pick a card readings around relationships. So I've got 3 piles for you to choose from today. The first pile is with, it's covered by I think this is Jasper. This is kind of fancy Jasper, which is shot through with irons. So even though it's a stone of peace, it does have that element of Mars there as well. So it's a nice combination of the kind of Venus and Mars energies. Then we've got pile 2, which is covered by the tumbled rose quartz. So that's obviously a traditional Venus ruled stone. And then pile 3, we've got some lovely raw copper, which is very much associated with Venus. So take some time to make your selection. Pause the video if you need to, and just see which pile or stone kind of jumps out at you, whether that's kind of visually or whether you're drawn to a particular, crystal. And then when you're ready, go to the description box where I've got links to each of the 3 readings. Hi pile 1, welcome to your reading. You picked the pile with the Fancystone Jasper. So we're going to have a look at your cards just to make sure that you've picked the right pile. So I've got a connecting energy here. I've also got an astrological card which will give us a sense of the sort of the energy between the two of you, or what the problem is, where where things might currently be a little bit stuck. And then I've got 2 people, so the 2 different parties. So just pick the person who you feel you identify more strongly with, in terms of left or right. There's no, it's not like left is sort of like feminine and right is masculine or anything like that. So let's start with the connecting energies. So first of all, we've got the cave, and so this kind of tells me that possibly you guys may be in separation at the moment, or there may be some, possibly, one of you's like retreated into your cave, maybe has been a little bit triggered in the connection, or just needs some kind of time out for themselves. They could be a little bit burnt out or overworked. We do have the number 17 at the top, which breaks down to a number 8. And that can be, some people see this as a number of the self. I tend to see it more in terms of the 8th house in astrology, which is more to do with transformation. So kind of, I think, inner work going on. If we look at this and we see that there's an egg kind of in the middle of this nest here, it looks to me as though, even though this person may have, one or both of you might have retreated from the world, it looks as though you're doing some really important inner work, some kind of incubation, which will lead to inner transformation, like the number 8, and then that will eventually have a ripple effect when you kind of rejoin the world. So I think this is a time of kind of introspection for either one or both of you. And as I say, I do kind of get the feeling that, either due to conflict or perhaps just due to kind of personal introversion, that, one or both of you may be kind of have pulled away for some me time, some self-care or some me time, some introspection. Yeah, interesting. So as your astrological kind of indicator, we've got Mars, and of course, Venus and Mars are the 2 planets that are coming together in these sets of conjunctions, first in Capricorn, I think, in mid-February, so it's kind of not long after Valentine's Day. and then the two meet up again in Aquarius in March, which is of course Aries month. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, the month of March or April might be significant for one or both of you. Mars also used to be the former ruler of Scorpio, and of course the number 8 for me is very much associated with Scorpio, you know, which is the natural ruler of the 8th house. So that could be important. It could be that, you know, sexuality or secrets of some kind, maybe what's kind of keeping you guys apart or complicating things. It could also have something to do with shared finances. Maybe you have slightly different visions of, you know, kind of how shared money should work. You know, money is always a kind of a bone of contention in relationships. It could also be with Mars that there's either been conflict, or that one or both of you may need to be more assertive in terms of either expressing your feelings or your needs. So that could be an issue. But let's have a look at both parties and just see, you know, what kind of energies we've got going on for each person. Okay, well, this is super interesting. I'm going to start with the person on the right. So for me, this person is kind of vibing with this kind of Mars energy here. But I kind of feel as though it's sort of wounded masculine energy. That's the strong sort of feeling that I kind of get. So first of all, you know, with the stingray, which is water energy, I do again get this feeling of Scorpio. You know, a stingray reminds me of a scorpion, but it's the water versions. And of course, you know, Scorpio is a water sign. So I'm kind of feeling as though, you know, this person, especially with tiny triumphs, where we've got a mouse that's really big and then the predator that's really small, I kind of feel as though this person is kind of having a crisis of confidence on some level, that they don't really feel that they can kind of embody that sort of assertive male energy that may be required to, you know, either kind of shoot your shot, you know, to sort of make your approach to somebody, or just to reach out if, you know, the two of you have potentially had an argument of some kind. I just feel, you know, with the stingray, that one of the things that that the Animal Spirit Guidebook, Kim Krans, kind of says is that the stingray doesn't have a strong spine. So, I mean, we can see here on the card that we've got the sort of the rainbow colors of the chakra here, the chakras. And there's the sense with the stingray that they need to develop like a spine, you know, a strong sense of self, strong self-confidence, or just the sort of this Mars energy, which is quite assertive, driven. It's very focused. It applies its will, and kind of goes for what it wants. And I kind of feel with tiny triumphs that, you know, in some way there's been an inner struggle to overcome bullying of some kind, or perhaps, you know, I kind of feel like to me that this energy is somebody who's got who's essentially identifies more with the masculine archetype, but at the same time isn't an alpha male, somebody who may have kind of grown up around a lot of strongly masculine figures, you know, that were kind of that traditional sort of alpha male energy, but they didn't really like vibe with it themselves. That on some level they felt, you know, that they were more of a kind of a sensitive male, and it might have taken them a while to find role models that they could identify with. You know, somebody, I kind of feel like this person, you know, is either artistic or creative on some level, or just, you know, is quite introverted and empathic or sensitive on some level. And so they found it difficult to embrace this kind of Mars energy that you know, society kind of expects from us when it comes to often, you know, roles in relationships, you know, kind of taking the lead, being more kind of assertive, expressing how you feel, you know, all that kind of thing. And then by contrast, the person on the right does feel more feminine to me. I'm in the left. I mean, first of all, we've got the spider, and it's interesting that both these cards show kind of rainbow colors, because, you know, in terms of the deck itself, this is actually quite unusual. Often there are only, there's a very limited palette that's kind of used in an image. So I think it's kind of interesting that we've got this rainbow theme kind of coming through, and that might be significant in some way. It could be that, you know, rainbows are a kind of a sign for you, or that colors somehow are important, or we could be talking about the rainbow body, you know, from kind of Buddhism. But somehow there's this need to kind of embrace and incorporate a range of kind of colors and modes of being, or one of both of you might be quite creative or kind of artistic. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The spider for me is a lot more feminine in terms of the energy, and it's interesting that, you know, the figure that we've got here in the other card is also quite a feminine figure. I mean, she's interesting, the Morning Dew girl. You know, in this Oracle of Mystical Moments, she tends to kind of talk about it as facing your fears. So facing up to things that might kind of frighten you, and kind of overcome any triggers that you might have, which would fit a little bit with this protection card, you know, if one or both of you has got triggered and kind of retreated. But to me, it's also, you know, if you think about the Morning Dew, like, dewdrops to me look like pearls. And, you know, I kind of think that that this particular person might be a psychic or sensitive or clairvoyant, and there might be somebody who is wise and has kind of collects these pearls of wisdom, but isn't the sort of person who necessarily feels the need to, you know, like to provide unsolicited advice. You know, they're that kind of quiet friend that if you ask their opinion, they'll kind of tell you what they think, and they'll usually be very astute in terms of their observations, but they won't kind of offer advice, you know, without being invited to. So I do feel this is again, this slightly introverted energy. Both of these people seem a little bit more introverted than extroverted. And it could be that both of them need to develop this slightly more confident energy, being out in the world, or just in terms of being able to assert their needs or to express their feelings. And with the spider, I mean, the spider is interesting because, you know, the spider is often associated first of all with the threads of fate, but it also kind of sits in the center of this web, and it uses its legs to kind of, almost as kind of antenna, to sort of feel any vibrations coming from 360 degrees around the web, you know, in order to kind of get a sense of either what's to come, like in the future, or vibes, like picking up vibes from the environment. I mean, you know, Kim Krans describes it as being somebody who's very creative and is able to kind of weave together the threads, various threads from, you know, so somebody who sees patterns, somebody who's good at finding kind of commonalities, you know, amongst different things. So I feel like this person is quite nurturing. I'm getting a strong sort of Cancer vibe, which is not coming from the cards really themselves, because we are talking about the earth element here, and of course we've got water sort of going on here. But I do feel that this is quite a nurturing person, somebody that is quite sensitive. They could be, you know, somebody who's a highly sensitive person, and so, you know, they may find being out in the world quite difficult. Also could be a strong empath. Definitely, you know, I do feel with both of these people, a more of an introverted energy than an extroverted energy. Two people who may need to, as I say, work on this Mars energy a little bit, in kind of embodying more assertive energy in terms of, you know, as I say, expressing themselves or just putting themselves out there. You know, it could well be that these are two people who both like each other but haven't had the courage to show it or to express it. Who may kind of watch each other, for example, on social media, but not really like comment or like, or, you know, other people's posts. Yes, but two very, very sensitive people, and in that sense I think are quite similar in a lot of respects. So yeah, let's get into the reading itself and see what else we can glean. So what I'm going to do today is I'm actually going to do a Celtic cross reading just for a change, rather than look at the separate energies, and then we'll clarify with some various message cards and oracles and that kind of thing. So I guess the question that I'm really asking is, what is kind of coming up? Let's kind of get a snapshot of where things kind of are, where they've been, and where things are heading for these two people in terms of their connection. Whoops. And then what I'm going to do is just pull up one card for each person, just to sort of get a bit more information, how they're kind of feeling right now. So we'll stick to the same positions that we had for the initial cards. So we'll have the spider on the left, and then we'll have the stingray on the right. Okay, so just going to move these up so you can see the cards a bit better. Okay, so let's see what is going on. So we'll start with the main cross, and then the light seems to be reflecting on this card, so let me just try and fix that so that you can see it. It's a bit better. Okay, so hopefully you can see the cards a little bit better now. Okay, so we'll start with the timeline here. Yeah, I mean, it definitely looks to me as though, in the recent past, there was either some kind of argument or some kind of disappointment, which made one or both parties kind of walk away from the connection. This card is a combination of the Moon and the Eight of Cups. So this talks about emotional confusion. It can talk about fears, being triggered on some level, which is very easy to happen in a relationship or in a romantic context. This is very often when we do get triggered. And due to confusion, perhaps one or both parties not being clear about how the other one feels. I mean, we did have that Mars energy there, and that sense of not being confident or assertive enough to actually express feelings or needs, that one or both people kind of walked away from the situation and just felt either dissatisfied, disappointed, or maybe kind of gave up and just thought, oh, well, this is kind of not going anywhere, kind of retreated into their cave. And now, at the moment, I think this card reflects that cave energy that we saw, the Queen of Pentacles. So this is all about kind of self-care. It's about valuing of oneself, self-love, self-confidence, that kind of thing, and also doing a lot of self-care. So again, I think that, you know, this is reflective of the idea of one or both parties having retreated into their cave, perhaps for a bit of me time, or just perhaps because of being disappointed in the past as far as either this relationship was concerned or perhaps a previous one, just feeling that they need to, you know, be a little bit circumspect and perhaps not rush into things and put themselves first, which is not a bad thing. And then, you know, at the sort of the base of the reading, we've got the Fool. This is actually the Fool in this particular deck. And, I mean, this is an interesting one. It does suggest, like, that Mars energy, that these two need to really kind of work up the confidence to take a bit of a risk, to actually express how they feel, show their feelings, risk asking that person out on a date, or sending them a Valentine's message, or, you know, just somehow being a little bit more open about how they feel and not worrying so much about, you know, the consequences. And then, you know, at the top we've got the Six of Wands in reverse, which is also the Tower. And to me, this talks about, like, one of two things. First of all, it can talk about hurt pride, because the Six of Wands, when it's upright, is about kind of victory, being in the public eye, getting a lot of praise from one's friends, or just a lot of affirmation from you know, kind of externally. And when it's in reverse, it can be a bit of like false pride, you know, wearing a mask, bravado, that kind of thing. So very often, because of fear, putting on a mask and maybe seeming more confident than one is. When, you know, when inside we're quite terrified. So, I mean, interesting that you've got these two iterations of kind of Mars energy, the one kind of very confident, the other one not so confident. You know, this one taking risks, and this one being too afraid to, because of kind of ego-based issues often, you know, being terrified of looking stupid, of being made a fool of their friends disapproving, that kind of thing. And the Tower is interesting too, because it's almost like resisting changes that need to kind of happen in terms of the way that we see things, the way that we do things. So ego structures or beliefs that need to kind of come down in order for a breakthrough to happen. And it just seems as though the only way that will happen is through taking a bit of a risk or a leap of faith, you know, putting oneself out there and not being so concerned about, you know, image or pride, that kind of thing. And I mean, if we look at the energies of the two people, I mean, it's quite interesting that this card was the Spider, which is interesting because, as I say, I do feel that that this person was kind of in more feminine energy, and yet here we've got the King of this is the King of Swords, who also doubles as the Emperor, and of course, again, this is Mars energy, and this card is all about kind of being assertive or taking control of one's life and operating from more of a logical perspective rather than an emotional perspective, seeing things clearly, speaking one's truth, and also taking action. You know, the Emperor is very assertive and is not afraid to kind of go for what they want, to make things happen, and, you know, to kind of take charge. So it's interesting that it's coming up with a feminine energy, because, you know, as I say, I do feel as though the Spider is that much more yin energy, as opposed to the person on the right, you know, the Stingray. So that's interesting. And then on the right, we've got the Two of Wands in reverse, which to me does potentially talk either about, you know, being at crossroads and not being able to make a decision, feeling a little bit frozen, not really knowing what to do for the best. But also, as you can see from the card itself, it can be about heated conversations. So it could well be that these two have had some kind of argument or exchange of words that has left one or both parties feeling a little bit injured or disappointed or hurt. Things didn't really kind of pan out the way that one or both parties expected. So that's interesting. Right, let's see what else we can glean. Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting. So, in the sort of position of what one doesn't want to kind of face up to, one's unconscious stuff. We've got the Nine of Swords, which is often about kind of feeling guilty, worrying, anxiety, being up all night, thinking about something, not knowing what to do for the best. But very often it's that anticipation or kind of catastrophe thinking, thinking the worst, essentially, when this may never happen. And then by contrast, we've got the Nine of Cups, which is about people in the environment or how one or both people feel about each other. And I mean, the Nine of Cups is really a wonderful card. It's a card of happiness, of wish fulfillment, of contentment. Sometimes it can be about self-indulgence, but I don't really feel that in this reading. I just feel as though it's more about, both of these people view each other in the same way. So it's just unfortunate that they're not really saying anything, and that if they took the risk here with the Fool, then with the Three of Cups, I do feel that they could really have a good time with each other, that they could have a lot of fun together, that things could really lighten up quite a lot, and that they would both be quite pleasantly surprised as to where things actually went. Because the Three of Cups for me is a card of kind of celebration, of good times. It's the kind of the dating stage in a relationship when you are supposed to be kind of having a lot of fun. There should be a lot of pleasure, going out, getting to know each other, having a laugh, that kind of thing. Sometimes it can be about friends as well. So it could be that these two need a little bit of help with some third parties. I don't really feel that there is third party energy here in the sense of another party involved, another person. But I mean, I could be wrong. We'll have to see what happens when we clarify. But I mean, you can see from the King of Cups here that there's definitely deep love between these two people. It's just that with the King of Cups has very deep feelings, but he isn't always able to express them openly, and that did seem to be the problem that we saw with the Cave and with Mars. So there seems to be a problem here of not being able to open up and actually confess, how you feel, how you truly feel, putting on a mask, pretending that you don't care, that kind of thing. It's also about emotional maturity, so it could well be that part of the lesson of this experience is kind of coming to that emotional maturity of not worrying so much about either what other people think or how you're going to look, look like looking stupid when it comes to your feelings, if in case the other person doesn't feel the same way, that kind of thing. Just being mature enough to kind of go, well, this is how I feel, and saying it and not feeling that it's embarrassing to do so, that it's just, the other person either feels the same way or they don't. And then the outcome is the Three of Pentacles in reverse. And I mean, this could talk about sort of third parties. It could be that one or both parties wasn't initially single or free to pursue the relationship, or that one person found out that the other one was seeing other people, and this is what caused this person to kind of walk away. But I think it speaks to me more of an unwillingness to kind of come together and cooperate, to work together to make this thing happen. But that if they did, if they could put their fears aside, I do think that there is this potential here for something really lovely. But anyway, let's kind of clarify further. So let's start by clarifying this this Three of Cups. Whoops. So what is Three of Cups in this? Or even better, let's ask first of all about the Moon. So let's ask about that Eight of Cups. So what has caused one or both people to walk away from the situation? interesting. So yeah, I mean, this is not really what I expected at all. So it looks to me as though whatever this situation was in the past kind of had more to do with possibly overwork or kind of conflicting priorities. So I kind of feel as though with the Eight of Pentacles here that there was a need for one of both parties to focus more on career and finances, and that they may have been a little bit burnt out on some level. They may have just needed to retreat because of burnout, of kind of just needing some downtime, essentially. Because I mean, the Sun is really a very, very positive card. It speaks of kind of playfulness, of fun, of happiness, success, that kind of thing. So I do feel that the reason why, you know, things may have kind of gone quiet and people may have pulled away into their cave may have more to do with one or both parties, you know, in terms of their kind of career goals or that kind of thing, or just energy levels, not having enough bandwidth to give to the situation. And this might have left one party feeling a little bit disappointed. And it could be that it was the person on the left, given that we've got this kind of Emperor card, you know, that this person is quite ambitious, or that they may be in the middle of a very important phase in terms of their career, and as such that they may not have had the bandwidth to kind of give to the connection as much as they would like. Okay, let's find out more about that Six of Wands at the top. Interesting. Okay, so it does look to me here with the Six of Wands as though there was some kind of ending or breakup of some kind, or just that there was something in the connection that needed to shift. And it could be that one person kind of still had baggage from a previous relationship, because we do, with the Four of Swords, sometimes this can be about someone healing after heartbreak and throwing themselves into work. And, you know, with the Five of Cups is very much that kind of energy of grief, loss, or looking to the past and kind of mourning and not really seeing the potential of whatever's right in front of them, because you've got these two cups here and the person's focused on the three spilled cups. So I do feel as though one party may have, you know, kind of come out recently of another connection which maybe had hurt them in some way or injured them, and there was still kind of baggage that they needed to kind of work through. And that what needed to sort of happen in the situation with the Six, which is echoing the Six of Wands, is, you know, that a change is required, like a drastic change in terms of the way that one or both parties, they you know, what they give to the situation, or their kind of attitude, that kind of thing. And it could be that one party felt that the other one was breadcrumbing them. You know, this can sometimes be the card of breadcrumbing, or that the connection wasn't 100% reciprocal. And so they kind of pulled back. And that, you know, death here very often points to the need for a kind of a reset, or for the situation to change in some way. I think it echoes that 8 that we had in the, you know, the protection card, the cave, which, you know, which kind of breaks down to, we had 17, which breaks down to an 8. So I kind of feel as though, yes, one party wasn't quite ready to sort of start something new, or just that the connection started off in an unsatisfactory way, it got off to a false start, and then one or both parties pulled away and things kind of ground to a halt. It, you know, it may also be with the Queen of Pentacles that one person felt as though they weren't getting what they deserved in terms of treatment from the connection. So that's interesting. Let's look now at that Three of Pentacles at the top, just to see if there is any kind of third party in the situation, third party energy. interesting. So the Emperor's come out again. Yeah, this is interesting. So it does look to me as though it has more to do with self-confidence with both people. So back to what we were saying about Mars and self-assertiveness, self-confidence, that kind of thing. Because the Emperor is very much, as I say, that confident masculine energy. The Queen of Wands is the most confident of the four queens. You know, she's very beautiful, she's very sexy, she knows what she wants, she's not afraid to kind of state her needs. So I kind of feel as though this is the energy that both parties need to embrace. That the feminine energy needs to embrace this Queen of Wands, you know, to kind of radiate her beauty, to sort of be confident about herself, her body, what she's got to offer. The masculine energy needs to take charge of the situation, to you know, to sort of feel as though they have power to make things happen, to be assertive, to take control, to be the man with the plan kind of thing. And that this would really move the situation forward, rather than this lack of kind of cooperation, that both people are not really kind of giving to the situation fully, and the reason that they aren't has more to do with a lack of self-confidence than kind of anything else. So that's really interesting. So it looks as though it's two people who do really care about each other and who do have reciprocal feelings, but who are not confident enough for whatever reason, either due to heartbreak and sort of maybe not self-confidence from a previous relationship, and that energy kind of lingering on the one hand, and then the other party just not feeling confident enough, not believing that the other party would ever be interested in them, and so worrying about coming forward, you know, and sort of saying how they feel, possibly because they think they'll be laughed at and kind of end up looking like an idiot. When in fact that's not the case. So if both of these people are able to kind of, you know, grow a spine to kind of level up and to take a bit of a risk, you know, things could really move forward in a very positive way with the Three of Cups and, you know, the Nine of Cups as well. So I think let's get some messages from each person now using the Hermit Tarot. So we'll first get for the Spider person. So messages, please. What would they say to the other person? If they could, if they had the guts. Interesting. Wow. That's so interesting. So I mean, this the Spider person looks like they really do have kind of high hopes for the connection. I mean, You Make My Heart Full is very similar to the Ten of Cups, and I Want to Start a Family with You is very similar to the Ten of Pentacles. So those are both kind of like, you are my perfect 10, I could see a future with you, I know you would make me really happy. And then we've got this You Are Wrong, which, as I say, does seem to point to this Two of Wands energy. Does it look as though there was some kind of difference of opinion, or perhaps one person jumped to conclusions about a situation and kind of walked off in a huff, got triggered, and maybe they kind of feel too as though the Stingray person has judged them wrongly, that they've kind of drawn wrong conclusions about their motives or their feelings. Maybe they've assumed that the Spider person isn't interested in them, or would never be interested in them, or maybe they've assumed that this person's gone back to their ex, for example, when in fact they haven't. They might just have withdrawn because, you know, they aren't 100% ready to be in another connection, because they haven't quite healed, kind of some wounds from a past relationship. Or it could just be that they are, as I say, focused on work and need some time for that. So this is really interesting. Now let's have a look at the Stingray person. And I've somehow managed to turn all my cards the wrong way around. End of Mercury retrograde, I think. Let's try again. Okay, so what would the Stingray person say to the Spider person if they could? Yeah, it's so interesting. The kind of appearances versus reality. I really feel that that's a strong message in this reading, that these are two people who tend to hide their feelings from the world for whatever reason, you know, due to fear, due to, mainly fear. I worry about us a lot. They are waiting for you, and I am terrified, right? That's so interesting. So I think really echoing the sentiments that we got in the beginning with, this card here with tiny triumphs. So I really do feel as though this stingray person does have some self-confidence issues for whatever reason, that they are quite a sort of a nervous, anxious person, you know, much like the mouse in both the Lenormand system and the what do you call it, the animal spirit deck. So this person quite worried, quite an anxious person. They may not show this. They might kind of have quite a strong and confident persona, but deep down are actually quite anxious. And I think this card reflecting this Nine of Swords energy, very, very similar. I'm terrified. So terrified of, I suppose the other person not having the same fear, not feeling the same way as them, terrified possibly that they're going to be made a fool of on some level, and just really worried that things are not going to pan out the way that they hope. And I mean, I think they're waiting for you energy. I always find this card a little bit kind of befuddling. I mean, they are waiting for you. Like, what does that mean? Like, are a group of people waiting for this person to kind of come back? Are they sort of saying that they think the other party's ex is waiting for them? But I just really feel as though this person's got the wrong end of the stick, that they have jumped to conclusions. That's why this person's saying you are wrong, and that there needs to be a sort of a shift in perspective here, so that that these two can kind of come together. I really feel like this is a kind of almost a comedy of errors or a misunderstanding on some level, and it's due to poor communication, which is kind of coming from a place of fear, where both people don't really want to kind of open up and say how they feel, because they are terrified that either the person is going to reject them, or that they don't feel the same way, or that they're going to be made a fool of in a kind of public setting, like with friends or contemporaries, that kind of thing. So let's get these two some advice and kind of close out the reading. I mean, it's interesting, we are coming off the tail end of Mercury retrograde, and I do think that the Venus and Mercury retrogrades have been quite tricky energy. That I think January 2022 has been quite tough on relationships. A lot of fears and kind of traumas coming up from the past that need to be kind of worked through, and I think we still are moving through that difficult energy, kind of coming out of the tail end of it. But I do think that as we get into mid-February, things are going to improve quite dramatically. Certainly in terms of the astrology, that's how it's looking. So I think, these two people shouldn't worry too much. I think that things are going to kind of work out okay. They just have to have a little bit of faith, both in themselves and in each other, and have the confidence to sort of speak up. And I think that they can, work through their issues. But anyway, let's get each of them an advice card and then see what the relationship itself needs in order to move forward. So, interesting. So, yeah, so the spider person, I think that, they are really kind of saying, just try and be present. Don't kind of overthink the future. Don't get stuck in the past with this Five of Cups energy. But at the same time, don't project too far into the future, because that can make us anxious. And we can also jump to all sorts of conclusions, when just by being present, very often we can drop down into a place of peace and confidence. And we can actually see things as they really are, rather than jump to all sorts of conclusions. And when we kind of in that fight or flight energy, so often we don't see things as they are. We tend to sort of be projecting or just seeing through this lens of fear, and very often our brain is tricking us and we're not actually seeing very clearly. So I think they're just really asking the spider person to drop down into their body, ground, take things one day at a time, be very present, and just see, you know, if things kind of shift from that, you know, from that kind of that sort of more grounded, centered energy. Interesting. So advice for the stingray person. So this is interesting because it's also water energy. It's number 7. This is number 32, which breaks down to 5. So to the sea is all about kind of going with the flow, or just allowing things to unfold naturally. So trusting in the natural flow of events, trusting in the relationship, like letting the relationship take its natural course, and not being so kind of terrified and trying to, you know, they've, as a result, trying to over control the situation. You know, very often when we're afraid, we tend to kind of micromanage. So just sort of, instead of like coming out of that fear energy that I feel, you know, very often people who've got strong Virgo placements or kind of Cancer placements tend to sort of have this, they have this tendency to sort of worry a lot and then try to kind of control or micromanage situations as a way to kind of manage their fear. So, but actually, it's a false sense of security. It gives them a false sense of security instead of just kind of. What it does is it creates resistance and it stops the situation from flowing, and that tends to create choppy energy, which then further snarls things up. So I think it's just kind of saying, let go of fear, you know, and come into more of a place of, you know, kind of going with the flow, not worrying so much about things that aren't necessarily ever going to happen, having the confidence to sort of think that there is that things could have a positive outcome, and then things can kind of magically fall into place. Yeah, so overall energy for the relationship is flexible. So I think it is really about both parties letting go of fear and of the tendency to over control or micromanage, or to sort of pull away as a way to manage fear and to guard against abandonment, rejection, that kind of thing, when actually what's required is a much more open, adaptable, flexible approach of kind of looking at situations and going, okay, well, maybe it's not quite as I originally thought. Maybe there is some room for maneuver here. If I'm a little bit more flexible, if I don't insist that things have to be like this and just kind of give a little bit and just see what happens, you know, by being present, by going with the flow, that things, as I say, could work out much more positively than both people ever anticipate. And part of that is embodying more self-confidence, like having the confidence, you know, to know that they are lovable, and that, you know, even if things haven't worked out for them in the past, that it doesn't necessarily mean that the same thing's going to happen going forward. So just a kind of softening, that's what I feel, is there's a softening that needs to sort of happen on both sides, rather than a kind of a rigid, kind of icy sort of vibe. And then I think things will move in a very positive kind of direction. So let's get one more piece of advice from the Universe Has Your Back deck, and then we'll pull some tiles, some name tiles, to get some initials. Yes, you see, isn't this beautiful? Joy is the ultimate creator. So yes, that's what I really feel, is that both of these people need to really let go of fear, really let go of kind of low self-confidence, to sort of chill out a little bit, to melt the ice, and to move into a place of like a lot more joy, and just of being open, more kind of open to things. And I think they'll be surprised really at what a positive direction this situation can take. I also think it's interesting that we've got this idea of a creator, because as I said, we did have that rainbow energy right at the start of the reading, you know, which for me is all about kind of being artistic and creative, and knowing that we have all these different ways of being and doing at our disposal that we can kind of tap into. We don't have to do things the same way that we've done them in the past, especially if things haven't worked in the past. So, you know, this death card, I think, speaking of a need for both parties to sort of try something different, to take a risk and a leap of faith, try and do things differently, come into a place of confidence, and they'll be surprised how things, how dramatically things could kind of progress or move forward in terms of communication and the situation if they allow themselves to do that. Okay, so let's pull some name tiles and see what initials come out. So I'm just going to grab a pile and see what we get. Okay, so first up we have the letter A. I don't know where to put these. Next we have the letter J, the letter V, M, N, U, D, L, T, another L, B, and H. So that might resonate with you. It might, refer to somebody's initials. It could spell out something that's significant to one or both of you. Yeah, interesting. But anyway, I hope that's been helpful, guys. All the very best for the upcoming conjunctions in February and in March. I hope it all bodes well for you. Do let me know in the comments if the reading has resonated with you, and if it isn't, feel free to choose another pile. But yeah, I'm wishing you all the very best for February and March. May good things come your way, and I hope to see you on the channel again really soon. Hi pile 2, welcome to your reading. So you picked the rose quartz, and what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the energies that I kind of pre-shuffled. So these are going to tell us something about the connection itself, as well as about the two different people, and that will help you to gauge whether this reading is for you or not. And then we're going to move into some tarot, and then we're going to have a look at, we're going to pull some name tiles and that kind of thing. So let's get into the energies themselves of the of this particular connection. So we've got, that's interesting. I think I'm just going to lay the cards out first of all, and then we will kind of get into looking at the separate energies. So I don't really have a kind of preference in terms of there's no gender involved in this, so just pick whichever side you feel resonates with you in terms of the energies and the way that I interpret them, and kind of go like that, go from that sort of that angle. Okay, yes. So, and as I was saying, in terms of connecting energies, it's kind of interesting actually. It looks to me as though like rain for me, I don't know why, but it always makes me think of the Empress card in the tarot. I suppose it looks quite similar. You've got all this fecundity, you've got the rain, which is obviously feeding the earth, and you've got all these flowers kind of coming up, so there's the sense of beauty associated with Venus. And then we have this seed kind of sprouting in this woman's womb area. So this really kind of highlighting the fecundity of the sacral chakra. So that might be important. It might be that you're a creative person. It could be that that the two of you are connected via the sacral chakra, which can be first of all about kind of child, kind of pregnancy and children, that kind of thing. It can also be about creativity, and it can also just be about, well, it can be about sex. I mean, let's face it. So that seems to be important in this connection. And also, I think with the with the ninth house, which is naturally ruled by Jupiter, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, and I think the reason for that is, that 3 times 3 equals 9, and of course that's the gestation period of a human fetus. So Jupiter, in that sense, I think they're talking about the sort of the abundance and the fecundity of bringing new life into the world. So, sorry I keep filling the cards, but they look really skew in my monitor. I don't really know why. I think it's the lens of the camera. but it kind of bothers my Venus in Virgo. So anyway, as I was saying, so I'm getting a strong kind of Jupiter vibe between these two people, and that can kind of manifest in a couple of ways. Jupiter is, first of all, the planet of, as I said, luck and expansion. So it could be that when the two of you are kind of come together, you feel as though the sum of your parts is more powerful than when you're kind of separate. So it could be that you are some kind of power couple, or that like in terms of human design, that you switch on centers for each other that perhaps you don't have access to ordinarily. It could also be with this this focus on the sacral chakra, that both of you are either generators or have sacral authority, that life force energy and health and kind of daily routines and diet, food, creativity are very important to both of you. And of course, with the ninth house, there is a strong emphasis on kind of foreign countries. So it could be that the two of you are separated, by continent, or it could be that you are from different backgrounds of some kind, and that this can either help or hinder the connection. And also with the ninth house, we're talking about beliefs and religions. So it could be that you either share certain beliefs, or that perhaps you come from different religious backgrounds, and that could be a factor in your connection, that it might sort of make things a little bit kind of trickier. But we'll learn more when we kind of get into the tarot. You could also have met at some kind of like spiritual retreat, or like a teaching, some kind of course, or at university, or because this is the ninth house is about kind of tertiary education, or kind of higher education. So that could also be important in your connection. But in terms of the individual energies, I mean, we have a really stark contrast between these two people. On the one hand, we've got this really sort of fiery energy of the Scorpion, along with listen, and then on the other hand, we've got this very soft energy of the Deer and the word "can you hear me?" So already we can see that there is some kind of theme going on here around feeling heard by this person, and on this side perhaps somebody who doesn't listen, who's very kind of vocal, and who has trouble hearing or seeing things from other people's perspectives. Because the Scorpion, in terms of the Kim Krantz Animal Spirit deck, the Scorpion is kind of similar to Scorpio in astrology, in that it's somebody who's very fiery, very passionate, very determined. It can be somebody who's quite who's jealous, and who like sometimes has a problem like distancing or detaching themselves of kind of letting go. So they can hang on to like a resentment if they feel that somebody did them wrong. They can kind of hang on to that for sort of ages. Equally, if they are attached to somebody, emotionally, they can also find it very difficult to kind of let go of a connection, So it can kind of work both ways. But very often with the Scorpio, with the Scorpion, we have this sense of a strong sense of passion, but also anger. So similar to that the geomantic card Rubaeus. So somebody who can get passionately angry and kind of sting, or somebody who can sting themselves. They could be a little bit self-destructive, or it could be that they kind of overcompensate because they know that they have this ability to hurt other people, and so they kind of isolate themselves from others, because they are so terrified of that side of them kind of coming out. But I do feel with listen here that there's a strong need for the Scorpio person to kind of calm down, to kind of take a step back, to detach a little, maybe zoom out, and try to kind of tap into their environment. You can see this person's hair is extending out into the ground, almost like roots. And so there's a sense of needing to send out antenna, and perhaps, just pause for a minute, put the emotions, the passions aside, try to cool down and see things from a little bit more of a kind of neutral perspective. It may also be, as I say, with this "can you hear me?" that the Deer person feels perhaps a little bit overwhelmed, or that the Scorpion personality is very, very strong, and that they tend to sort of dominate the connection, and so this person doesn't feel that they don't feel heard. Perhaps they find it difficult to get the Scorpio person to actually acknowledge or hear or fulfill their needs. And Yes, because I mean, if you look at the card, it's interesting that we've got, this is kind of water energy, this is earth, and here we've got water here and we've got earth here. So this is really interesting kind of juxtaposition of kind of earth and water energy. And it might be that one or both of you have strong earth or water placements. You could also have a lot of prominent planets in the 9th house, and again you could also have a prominent Jupiter of some kind, possibly Jupiter in a water or an earth sign, because we've got rain and we've got the earth here. So it could be that you've got Jupiter kind of placements in one of those two elements. But with Can You Hear Me, this card is very much about somebody who is perhaps naturally a little bit shy, somebody who tends to retreat into their shell. You can see that they're kind of half air, half water, and that they've got this other little shell kind of in their hands, which is almost like a trumpet, and it just seems to me as though this person feels either cut off, a little bit lonely, perhaps abandoned, or just simply unheard. They just feel as though on some level that they aren't being heard. So there's this strong sense of can you hear me? Or it could be that these two people are kind of separated, and this person feels a strong sense of kind of longing or desire to reconnect with the other person, but doesn't really want to kind of reach out, and maybe is hoping, sending out telepathic messages and hoping that this person's going to kind of pick them up. But kind of the overall vibe I get is more that that these two people maybe have slightly different, they come from different places in terms of their beliefs, or maybe their cultural background, and therefore their expectations in the relationship, and that there's a strong need for communication that is more receptive rather than kind of strongly active. So in other words, more kind of Venusian than kind of Martian, if we want to kind of talk about the astrology. Because with the deer is this beautiful, gentle energy of somebody who's very compassionate, very nurturing, very protective. Kim Krans describes the deer as being somebody who's similar to a new parent. So somebody who's very gentle and nurturing, and is very much, like high oxytocin levels. So somebody who loves to kind of bond with other people, who's very who's kind of relationship oriented, whereas this person might be a bit more independent or tend to isolate themselves, so that they may be a little bit of a loner, or they may in some way just end up isolating themselves because of their behavior, if they lash out, that kind of thing. But the deer person does kind of is very good at sort of birthing things and at nurturing what's kind of new. So it's interesting that we've got this image of the seedling that is just kind of sprouted in this woman's womb area. That it seems as though maybe this connection is new, or that it kind of, there was a beautiful start, and that kind of seedling needs to be nurtured, rather than sort of like people kind of riding roughshod, or being a bit of a bull in a china shop. That there's a need for a kind of a gently approach of nurturing whatever this new relationship or connection is, so that it can grow into something really beautiful. And it seems to me as though the key to this is the Scorpion person listening, so less talking from the Scorpion person, and more sort of self-expression and opening up from the deer person. So that's the kind of the vibe that I'm getting, initially. But let's have a look at the tarot now and see what we get in terms of the actual kind of course of events, if you like. How things have sort of unfolded in the recent past, and how they are likely to kind of progress, sort of moving forward. So what I'm going to do this time, rather than pull kind of separate cards for both parties, is I'm going to do a Celtic cross, and then we'll do a lot of clarifying with other decks, and we'll get some advice with the oracle cards, as well as some messages from each person, and then we will pull some name tiles at the end to try and get some initials. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting in terms of the astrology. Even though we are moving into this really wonderful Venus-Mars sort of energy, which is almost blessed by Jupiter. Both planets are going to be sextile to Jupiter. we have come out of quite a fraught period of that Venus and Mercury retrograde, which did, I think, bring up a lot of things for people, toxic things, patterns, and brought a lot of things to the surface, you know, in terms of relationships and things that needed to be acknowledged and dealt with, and that kind of thing. And I think, you know, we haven't really got into the really good energy yet, which I think will start in mid-February. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, what kind of comes out in the cards, because I do feel like the way things start out may not be the way that they finish. So that's just worth, you know, kind of bearing in mind. So let's... Can't quite fit all of these cards in. Okay, and I'm going to use the solar deck to pull a card for each person so that we also get some more information. Okay. Oopsie. Okay. So I'm going to assume that this is the Scorpion person and this is the Deer person, just to keep things, you know, simple. All right, so let's get a sense of the timeline, what's been happening between these two people. This is so interesting. This card came out in the previous reading and I turned it the right way around before I put it back in the deck, and it's come out upside down again. So it clearly wants to be in that position. That's so interesting. Okay. This is very interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay. So this... I think this is going to be a very specific reading for a small group of you. It's not necessarily going to resonate with everyone. So if you weren't kind of sure based on what I said previously about whether this pile is for you or not, I think you're going to get kind of clear now. And then, you know, if it's not your reading, then feel free to choose another pile. But what I'm feeling very strongly from the cards here is that this is a connection where one person, two people are in separation, and I think it's kind of come about as a result of quite selfish behavior by the person by the Scorpion person, possibly dishonest behavior as well. Yeah, I do kind of feel as though this connection had a lot of promise. You know, if we start in the recent past, this is the Queen of Cups, but she's also the Empress. So interesting that it's kind of reiterating the Rain card that we had at the beginning of the reading. You know, Rain is similar to the Queen of Cups, which is water energy, and then we've got, you know, this kind of vibe of the Empress, which I was telling you about. So it does look as though this connection had a lot of potential, and had the potential to grow into something really amazing. There also seems to have been a strong intuitive and kind of heart-based connection between these two people. I'm thinking specifically of the Deer person. You know, the Empress is often seen as the mother, so kind of echoing that energy of the Deer here. So there was a really lovely kind of nurturing feel to the connection. Certainly, I think the Scorpion person was drawn to the Deer person because they felt that beautiful, gentle, nurturing energy of the Deer person, and felt very kind of drawn to it, perhaps because, you know, they themselves are so kind of, you know, seem to be the opposite, where they seem to be quite margin, if you like. And then what I kind of think, you know, happened in sort of, this is the sort of immediate, you know, what, you know, the kind of current energy, if you like, is that there was some kind of like standoff or kind of tower moment or ultimatum, which led to a separation, because we've got the Three of Swords here, which is very often about kind of heartbreak, separation, conflict, that kind of thing. And it seems to have something to do with the fact that reciprocity was kind of needed in the situation. So it seems as though on some level, more than likely the dear person, because we had that, can you hear me, felt as though the Scorpion person was being a little bit selfish, and that they weren't really acknowledging the dear person's needs. And also I think that the dear person felt that the situation was very out of balance, that on some level the connection, that the relationship was too one-sided, and so they may have kind of called it quits and said, no, this isn't really kind of for me. And but there does seem to be a lot of pride in this situation. We've got the Six of Wands in reverse here and the Tower in reverse. So there was a need for some structure to come down, some way of doing things, a belief, something entrenched, which was kind of ego-based, needed to kind of come down. And it's almost as though there was a refusal to do that. There was a kind of a refusal to change, a refusal to compromise, and so this kind of led to a sort of a standoff and possibly even a separation. And this has now led to a kind of the situation stagnating, or kind of almost kind of going into freeze mode, because this is the Two of Swords, which is very often about kind of inner conflict, not really knowing what to do for the best. But it's also the Hangman, and of course the Hangman is kind of in suspended animation, where they feel bound, they don't really know how to move forward, and very often there's a need for a perspective shift, which is, I think, the strong message that we got with those two cards of like, listen and can you hear me, along with the Ninth House. So there's a strong need for this. I feel this is a belief, if we think about the Ninth House, it may be a belief about relationships, about kind of gender roles, or that one party has this strong sort of entrenched idea about like what they value in life, and they're not prepared to kind of compromise on some level. And so all the potential of this initial kind of connection has sort of amounted to very little. And the only way to sort of fix things, I think, going forward is with the Six of Pentacles, which speaks of karmic balance and of a need for equal give and take. But also, it also suggests that the reason these two people have kind of come together is to learn certain lessons around give and take and reciprocity. And there may also be the sense of paying off a karmic debt. That certainly is a possibility. Now, the Scorpion person is represented here by the Seven of Diamonds, which is the Seven of Pentacles. And, I mean, it's interesting if we consider that it's also the Star. So, it does seem as though, the Scorpion person does feel equally hurt by the situation, even if they are, mainly responsible for how things have kind of turned out, and that they do see potential in the connection. The Seven of Pentacles for me is always about, the farmer and the sort of the need to like invest in the situation and do what is required, in order to sort of bring things to harvest, which is, represented by the Empress here. So there's a strong kind of agricultural metaphor going on here, which I think is again represented by this rain, by this fecundity card, that there's a strong need to kind of give the situation what it needs in order for things to kind of grow to the point where they blossom, and that isn't an overnight process. So there's a need for patience, number one, and there's also a need to contribute to the situation. And it could be that, on some level the Scorpion person feels wounded, and so in that sense they are in need of healing before they can actually kind of give to the situation in the sort of in the way that is required in order to sort of bring this tower down and to sort of see the fulfill the potential of this Empress energy. And then On the other hand, we've got quite a strong card actually for the deer. I'm quite surprised. And this is the second time that this has happened. So there may be a connection actually to pile 1. This card is the King of Swords, and it's also the Emperor, which is very strong masculine energy. And it could just be saying that the deer person perhaps needs to embody more of that kind of masculine energy. You know, it might be that they are too soft, that they are too kind of yin, and there's a need for more kind of balance, you know, need to assert themselves, you know, with that "can you hear me?" That there's a need for them to speak up, to speak their truth, to actually say how they feel, if they feel hurt, if they feel that the other person, you know, just sort of, so that this kind of, maybe, you know, so the situation can kind of heal, you know, rather than kind of keeping things in and then being passive aggressive or acting like a victim, that kind of thing. But the King of Swords speaks truth. You know, he isn't a verbose person. So very often it's about being economical with your words, or sometimes not saying very much at all. So sort of withdrawing and letting silence speak. You know, sometimes silence can sort of speak more eloquently than kind of saying a lot of things. But I think, you know, with that energy of "can you hear me?" I do think that this person may be blocked in the throat chakra area and may need to sort of speak their truth and to sort of get things out in order to remove like energetic blockages and that kind of thing. And, you know, maybe it would be worth the dear person spending some time journaling, just to sort of, you know, get things out on paper and get the energies in their system flowing so that they aren't too blocked, because that might also be causing a bit of a problem in the situation. But, you know, I mean, it's so interesting that we've got, you know, the Emperor here, which is very strong, as I say, masculine energy. That could be that the deer person wants the Scorpion person to like fill that role, to sort of be quite an assertive male, you know, a strong, the person who's kind of dominant in the situation. Or it could be that they feel that the Scorpion person is too dominant and it's kind of, you know, like my way or the highway. But we'll find out more. We'll do a little bit of clarifying in due course. But let's just see what else we can learn from these cards. Yeah, so, I mean, you know, it's interesting. It does seem to me as though on some level with the Hierophant here that this has to do with a difference of expectations and values when it comes to relationship, particularly when it comes to commitment, number 1, and number 2, like religious or spiritual beliefs, that kind of thing. Because the Hierophant is all about somebody who is, it can be about an organization, it can be somebody who's a teacher, but it's generally somebody who likes to conform or to be seen to be doing the right thing by others. It's also somebody who has strong principles or beliefs, and may be a bit unbending and uncompromising when it comes to those particular beliefs. I mean, this can also be about karmic lessons. So as I say, I do feel that there's a strong element of karma between these two people, that they may be sort of working out some unresolved stuff from like past lives, that kind of thing, or just learning important lessons around you know, negotiating different beliefs or perspectives, that kind of thing within a relationship. I mean, it can always be tricky, or it could just be that one party doesn't want to commit, and that's what's sort of led to this sort of separation. But then, you know, it's interesting. I mean, people in the environment. I mean, this is the sun. This card kind of doubles up as the sun, but it's also the 9 of Wands. So I think people, you know, kind of around them see potential for this connection to be this beautiful kind of Empress energy, that there's a lot of potential here for happiness between these two people. But I think, you know, with the 9 of Wands here, there's a need to like come out of patterns that are quite draining, that drain the connection or the vitality that it needs to actually blossom into something, you know, kind of beautiful and that has longevity. So there's the sense that somehow the actions of like one or both parties is causing the potential of the situation to kind of drain away, and that there's definitely a need for a kind of a rethink here, or a sort of a reset of the energies. And I do feel that a lot of this has to do with communication. So it's interesting that we've just come out of, you know, Mercury retrograde. And then in the hopes and fears position, we've got the Nine of Swords in reverse. So I think both parties kind of realize that a lot of what's happened in the situation has been to do with like internal fears or beliefs that they projected onto the other party, and that the way forward here is to really let go of those internal triggers and fears that often keep us isolated or separate from each other, or make us push people away, you know. So there's a desire to let go of those kind of internal fears and that kind of thing, and move into much more like positive energy. And yeah, I mean, with the Four of Cups as the sort of the outcome, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. You know, when the Four of Cups is upright, it's very often about feeling like a little bit disillusioned or dissatisfied or kind of meh about things, you know, feeling a bit depressed, maybe sorry for oneself, not seeing the good in the situation. You can see you've got like three vases with flowers that have wilted, but in one's peripheral vision is actually a fourth, but whoever it is that is represented in the card can't really see that, so that they can only see the sort of the downside of the situation rather than the silver lining. But when it's reversed, it suggests that there is hope in the situation, that people need to be patient, and to just try and shift perspective so that they see the potential, like the upside, like the rainbow, the silver lining, rather than keep, you know, to constantly concentrating on the clouds, and that might help to kind of shift things in a much more positive direction. But let's get some more information first of all with the ordinary tarot. So let's find out what this Tower in reverse is. So what is this Tower? What is the Six of Wands in reverse? Yeah, I mean, I get a strong sense of bravado that, you know, perhaps the Scorpion person has a lot of pride. They may be quite opinionated, and that once they kind of state something, they feel entrenched. They don't feel as though they can kind of give way, because they would look stupid if they sort of backed off or changed their mind, that kind of thing. Anyway, let's see what comes out. Yeah. Interesting. Yes, so I mean, I think what these cards are saying is that, like this, I really feel this is about the kind of the Scorpio person more than the deer person. I kind of feel as though that, you know, this person has a lot of love for the deer person, but they don't know how to express it. And so in the past, they've tended towards being a little bit selfish, you know, kind of maybe gaslighting. They may also play mind games. But you know, because of what's happened, I think they are starting to realize that way of doing things is not really working. It's not actually getting anyone anywhere. So there is this need to shift into more cooperative energy where, you know, where both parties work together rather than only think about themselves. That's sort of like the vibe that I'm getting there. But let's find out more about the Three of Swords. So please could you give us some more information about the Three of Swords? Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So it looks as though both parties see the potential in the situation. You know, the Ten of Pentacles really speaks of a connection that has what it takes to kind of go the distance, and both parties do actually want it to sort of move forward in a more positive direction with a Chariot. But there does seem to be an issue here of one or both parties being left out in the cold, worrying about rejection. There's just a strong sense of I mean, again, I feel like, these two people are not speaking. I feel like they are in separation, much as we had in Power 1, where there was potential for things to sort of, as I say, move forward positively, but they didn't happen, and it was because one party either kind of walked away from the situation, blocked the other person, or kind of felt, or one party pushed the other one away, and kind of maybe because they were hurt. And so there's this feeling now of like abandonment, of being rejected, and a lot of hurt, I think, with the Three of Swords. With the Deer person feeling unheard, and the Scorpion person possibly feeling, as I say, rejected on some level. Yeah, interesting. Let's find out more about this Hierophant, because to me it's very similar to that ninth house card, as I said, which is all about beliefs and one's cultural background, that kind of thing. I mean, there could also be an element of the people around them not really approving of the situation, which could also put further pressure. It could be that the Scorpion person comes from a background where that's quite conservative, where the masculine is expected to be quite like dominant, whereas the Deer person may come from a much more egalitarian sort of background, or just doesn't do well with kind of being bossed and dominated, tends to sort of withdraw into themselves, if that kind of happens. Interesting. Wow. Okay. I mean, we've got 2 8s here, which is fascinating. So this seems to kind of speak of the connection in terms of, like, now, a couple of things. Teaching possible spiritual lessons around, first of all, mastery. So this could be self-mastery. It could be, kind of mastery of relationship skills. It could somehow be that work and career play a role in this situation. And then I think it also has to do with either, like physical distance. So, as I said, with the 9th house, it can sometimes be about people that are separated, in different countries, and that in order for things to move forward, that there's a need to kind of travel to actually see each other or be in each other's company. It can also be about communication. Sometimes, the 8 of Wands can be about, needing to kind of work on communicating. And then the Queen of Pentacles is all about self-care and self-worth. So to me, this speaks of both parties needing to sort of value themselves, and to practice good self-care, because even if the Scorpion person does tend to be a little bit feral, shall we say, it may come from a place of neglect. Like they may have grown up in a background that somehow where they suffered emotional neglect on some level, and so they don't really know how to self-soothe, for example, if they get angry, how to kind of deactivate themselves when they're feeling triggered, that kind of thing. Whereas the Deer person just might need, they may be quite a sensitive person who needs a lot of downtime in order to sort of recharge their batteries, or it could be that they just need to value themselves more in order to, when it comes to relationships, so that they don't always get involved in situations where they are taken for granted, or where there is an imbalance, like we see with the Six of Pentacles. It's speaking strongly of a need to find some kind of balance in the situation, reciprocity in terms of give and take, in order for things to improve in the situation. But let's now just find out more about that Four of Cups in reverse, because that suggests that the situation could improve with patience and with consistent, like a change of attitude, if you like. So rather than sort of sulking, or both of them withdrawing, like finding a way to talk through problems. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So I think in order for this situation to improve and for these two people to come together, I think a couple of things need to happen. I think first of all, any kind of ambivalence on the part, particularly of the Scorpion person, around commitment, which we saw with the Hierophant, needs to be kind of overcome, because the Knight of Wands tends to sort of come in quite strong initially. They can be quite charming and what's the word, like smooth, but they tend to be quite sexual, and then they tend to flip-flop a little bit when it comes to follow-through. So very often they kind of blow hot and cold, and so I think it can also talk about ambivalence, like not being sure whether you are wanting to be in a connection or not. And then with the Emperor, we've got that kind of a reiteration of the the Emperor that we got here, which is all about leveling up, about being mature, about taking control of one's destiny, and also just in terms of masculine energy. I mean, it's a far cry from the Knight of Wands. It's kind of a leap from a knight to a king to the Emperor. So I think there's a need to, if we think that this is also a four, like the Four of Cups, I think there's a strong need for one or both parties to kind of level up and mature, and to sort of adult in the situation, if you like, in order for things to move into much kind of calmer waters. Because with the Six of Swords here, there is definitely potential for that. There's definitely potential to for things to move in a much more positive direction. But I think it's going to require quite a lot of effort, particularly from the Scorpion person, in order for that to happen. And it's the question of whether the Scorpion person is dedicated enough, is committed enough to doing that, or not. Let's get some messages now from the Hermit Tarot, because that can also give us a bit more information about each person's state of mind. So please could we have 3 cards for the Scorpion person? Interesting. So it could be that the Six of Wands in reverse also has something to do with like other people getting involved and pride, because the Hierophant and the Six of Wands together can sometimes be about people who are overly concerned about what other people think. So it may be that somehow, as I say, that one person hasn't been behaving very well, and it's caused like problems with in terms of gossip or third party interference, maybe rumors, that kind of thing, so that it can make trust difficult, and it could also be why one or both people kind of ran away because it was just they just found it all too much. It's just too humiliating. The potential for kind of humiliation just being quite strong. And sometimes it could also be about not being able to admit that you're wrong, say sorry. Especially with that Five of Swords. Okay, let's see. Interesting. Yeah, so I mean, you can see from these cards that Knight of Wands energy is definitely associated with the Scorpion person. This kind of nah is very similar to this kind of hot and cold flip-floppy energy of the Knight of Wands. So somebody who, you know, is, as I say, doesn't have a problem with like a one-night stand or friends with benefits or you know, kind of booty calls, that kind of thing, but isn't really always that keen on the follow through, you know. And then with definitely, well, I mean, I'll be interested to see what comes out for the other person, because that might you know, explain what that definitely is. But it does look as though the Scorpion person is very worried about what other people think. With gossip only hurts more. As I say, I do get a strong element of pride coming from this person. And, you know, with that listen, that they maybe need to just stop for a minute and see things from another person's perspective. But I suppose, you know, when we are feeling defensive, it can sometimes be difficult to do that. Okay, so let's see. You are wrong. It's quite funny. Okay, interesting. Wow. Okay, so it does look as though you know, one of the things that is obviously draws these people together is kind of a strong sexual attraction. As I said, the Knight of Wands is quite sexy. He can sometimes be a bit of a fuckboy, excuse my language. And clearly, you know, there's a strong attraction between these two people with this 6 here. But then definitely there's this sense with, you know, this you are wrong, that the dear person feels, you know, wronged. Or that the Scorpion person is wrong in terms of what they've either said or done. That does seem to be, and it does seem to be, as I say, that they've done something that's caused a bit of gossip or scandal. So they do seem to have done something a bit shady, or a little bit, you know, not so cool, shall we say, which has obviously got the dear person feeling quite hurt and possibly got their back up, and they may have, as I say, blocked the Scorpion, or just sort of pushed them away, or kind of said no, I'm sorry. But you know, you can see that with the 7 here, I just dream and wish for everything, that they do on some level want to heal the connection, and I think it's because they see the potential, you know, with that Empress card that we had at the beginning. They see the potential here, but you know, this can be like the 7 of Cups, where there can sometimes be a little bit of like wishful thinking or confusion, you know, where one person is not being maybe discerning, or you know, is kind of, you know, there's those kind of connections where there's a strong sexual attraction and can sometimes blind us to the truth about a connection, or make us kind of compromise ourselves in a way that we wouldn't ordinarily. Yeah, it's interesting. Let's get some more advice. So we're going to start with the Wisdom of the Oracle and get a piece of advice for each person, and then kind of some for the connection itself. Right, so for the Scorpion person, we get the Tribe, which is interesting. So it does seem as though on some level, part of the lesson, or the sort of the area where this person needs to do some work, is around like social rituals and the kind of the group dynamics. So, you know, if you think about relationships in the sense, this was a strong theme that came up in the Cancer, I think it was the Cancer full moon, which kind of back in July of 2021, close to when we had that that Venus Mars conjunction in Leo, that there was a strong emphasis on how when two people kind of come together, particularly in a marriage, that it isn't just about two people that are kind of coming together. It's about families that are being merged, and also communities, and that the whole kind of rites and passages of around kind of, you know, marriage and that kind of thing are also social rituals. So I think there's a strong element here with this gossip only hurts more in the tribe, that this person, I mean, they might be a bit of a nonconformist. They might be a bit of a what's the word? A free spirit, and they might find it quite difficult to actually commit as a result of that, to sort of settle down and to kind of obey or conform with the expectations of society when it comes to, you know, what commitment means and what it involves, that kind of thing. So it does seem on some level as though there is something here about this person and their relationship to groups that is important, and also their family background might be important, or their social grouping. Interesting. So co-create, which I think takes us back to that deer energy, which, as I said, is very nurturing. And I do really feel with the 7 here that this person is really willing to, the deer person is willing to work with the Scorpion person, but they realize that it has to be a mutual thing with the 6 of Pentacles, that this can't be a one-sided thing where one person does all the work, because it just ends up draining, you know, the giver. And that, you know, in order for this connection to be healed and for, you know, kind of adulting to sort of take place, it looks as though the dear person needs to learn lessons around like receiving and allowing space to receive, and also maybe accepting when that they can't sort of do the whole relationship by themselves. They can't sort of rescue the person and love the other person enough for the both of them, if you like. So it has to be a kind of a mutual thing. Interesting. This card also came up in the previous reading, so I do think there's a connection between these two readings. So the connecting energy is interesting. Flexible, which is 19, breaks down to a 2. Interesting that we've got 40 here, which breaks down to a 4, and we've got a lot of 4s here, which is quite stable energy, you know, with the 4 and the Emperor. So this is kind of stable energy that talks about kind of grounding and a need for maturity and solidity. With flexible, we're breaking down to a 2, which is that much more lunar energy. It's more about kind of collaboration, of working with others, of being a little bit more open and adaptable in terms of the way we do things. And it does look to me, you know, in terms of that that listen card that we had, that there's a need for the Scorpion person to perhaps be a little bit less set in their ways, or, you know, entrenched in their beliefs about how things should be, or like thinking that they're right, and sort of trying to possibly, you know, to sort of justify their position rather than sort of stopping and listening and maybe reconsidering their position, because it does seem to me as though, you know, they are quite aggressive and aren't willing to entertain the fact that they might not be right in this situation, or that they might not have acted in the best kind of way. And equally, I think for the deer person, there's a need to sort of be more flexible or adaptable in terms of maybe leaving room or space for the Scorpion person to maybe come and apologize, or ask, you know, what's kind of going on, and then, you know, kind of speaking their truth, because it could be with this "you are wrong" card and especially with this very strong energy here of the King of Swords, that I really feel like this person's cut off the Scorpion person, and that they've almost severed communication, you know, that they've blocked this person, or they've like giving them silent treatment. And it could be that you know, in order for things to improve with this 8 of Wands here, that they need to allow more flexibility, more room. They need to show that they are approachable, that they are open to dialogue with the other party, and then kind of express their needs, rather than sort of being aggrieved and then shutting down and not really allowing room for the situation to improve. Yeah, I think those are my my main thoughts. So let's get some final advice from the Universe Has Your Back deck, and then we'll pull some name tiles just to finish off. So interesting, these readings have not been what I expected. But I guess that's the sort of energy that's around at the moment. As I say, I think we are kind of at the tail end of all that retrograde energy. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be resolved in order to allow the more like the potential of those Venus-Mars conjunctions to come into their full kind of ripeness, if you like. Interesting. Gosh. So, my fearless freedom lights up the world, which is so interesting because to me immediately it springs to mind this Knight of Wands. So I do really feel as though you know, this person might be very they might be a sort of a visionary or a kind of a way shower in terms of their career, and it could be that whatever that they do in the world has a lot to do with freedom and about being fearless and kind of you know, going out there and sort of liberating people from, you know, kind of social bonds or restrictions. But that same energy may not work in the context of a relationship, and I think maybe with this emphasis on the ninth house and the Hierophant of beliefs, that maybe there's a need to separate those two things out, particularly for the Scorpion person, so that there is more room for sort of flexibility and nuance when it comes to relationships. Because I mean, you can't really have like a long-term relationship like this this Empress. You can't have a sort of a long-term commitment without being willing to give up some of your freedoms. I mean, you just can't. It's the two things are sort of contradictory. So I think maybe there is just a need to reassess what social bonds mean and see them in a different light, possibly, where they aren't just all about sort of feeling as though you're kind of tied down and restricted. That sometimes, you know, those bonds can actually bring stability. They can bring a sense of safety. They can also bring a sense of security. So, you know, it kind of cuts both ways. But I mean, a really, really interesting reading. Okay, so let's finish off with the name tiles. Okay, so we've got an F, we've got a W, a V, an R, and two A's. So those may resonate with you, maybe some initials, they may not. But as I say, I do feel as though this reading is quite specific. It's not going to resonate with everybody. So yeah, I hope that's been illuminating, if nothing else. And yeah, sorry it was a little bit heavy, but you know, I guess, you know, what wants to come through, what needs to come through does come through. And so yeah, it's just kind of take what resonates and leave the rest, you know, where it doesn't. But anyway, all the very best for this upcoming Venus-Mars conjunction. I hope that things improve from here, and you know that you know, soon things will kind of yes, just generally heal, and you know, that we get some more of this kind of star energy coming through. But yeah, sending you lots of love, all the very best, and hopefully see you again soon on the channel. Hey there, Pile 3, welcome to your reading. This is your reading if you picked the Wool Copper, so Pile 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with these cards, which I've pre-shuffled, and essentially what they're going to do is they're going to tell us a little bit about each person in the connection, and then also a little bit about the where things are kind of at, the connecting energy between these two people. And this will help you to make up your mind as to whether this reading is actually for you or whether you need to, you know, pick another pile. So let's get into it and see what we can see. So we've got 2 cards for each person, and then we've got some connecting energy here. So let's have a look. Do that rather. Interesting. So a lot of fire first up. So this is really interesting, actually. Yeah, I mean, as I say, we've got a lot of fire here, so it's possible that one or both of you has got a lot of fire placements in their chart. There's also a lot of red in terms of color, so the root chakra may be important, and of course that relates to things like survival, security, and you know, kind of physical health, that kind of thing. So those might be, you know, kind of issues that weave through this relationship, or they may be reflective of the two people involved in terms of, you know, themes that they are kind of working on. So I mean, right off the bat, I'm feeling quite strongly that one of the things about this particular connection that draws these two people together is something about home, first of all. So they may feel when they meet each other that they've almost come home. There's definitely that possibility. It could also be that one person makes the other person feel safe. You know, we've got this under my umbrella, and you can see this man is offering, you know, his umbrella to the bird. So there could be an element of one person kind of taking care of the other, or just making the other person feel emotionally safe. And as I say, it could also be with a long way home that that the Phoenix person feels as though they have come home, like they've met somebody who feels like home to them on some level. So really interesting energy, because it was completely different to the first 2 readings. And then I mean, we'll get into the two things, the two people separately, but in terms of the connecting energy, it's also really interesting because it's kind of, we've got this strong sense of like security and home and safety here, and yet these 2 cards suggest adventure and kind of going out into the world and sharing knowledge, and you know, it's a kind of it's a much more outward focus as opposed to the somewhat more insular energy of these 2 people. So it could be that the 2 of them, the combined energies of these 2 people make them feel brave enough and safe enough to kind of venture out into the world seeking adventure. So we've got the south here. This is the south, like the southern hemisphere, and there's a sense of, you know, kind of venturing out into the world and exploring, having fun together, traveling, that sort of thing. And with the waning gibbous moon, this is really about dispersing any knowledge that one has gained to others, so sharing with others, communing with others. So really interesting. It's almost as though these 2 people, when they come together, are able to, they may have some kind of shared mission, or it may be that in some way their energies combine to like to enliven, as I say, first of all each other, to take more risks in life, to have more fun, to sort of have adventures, but also I think to somehow benefit other people, like communities or a group or society, that kind of thing. So it's really interesting energy, actually. Also quite playful, I feel, with this adventure and the South card. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out in the tarot reading. But, you know, let's start with the lizard person, first of all. I mean, I find it so interesting that these 2 creatures are both, I mean, they're quite close sort of in evolutionary terms to each other. So many people believe that birds evolved from reptiles, and then others believe that the dinosaurs, you know, evolved from bird-like creatures as well. So there's this strong kind of like evolutionary kind of link to these 2 cards. But the lizard person is somebody who's very instinctual and who is able to kind of pick up vibes, like in like in spaces, you know. So very often they'll have strongly intuitive third house placements, and they can be a bit like psychic sponges. So they can kind of go out into, they can sense atmosphere. So if you take them to a house, they'll kind of say, well, this will be a good place to live or not. They can also pick up on like group dynamics and that kind of thing, and they very often are either kind of clairaudient or telepathic. So they can attune very sensitively to their surroundings and to people in their environment. But what that can sometimes mean is that they get drained easily. So they do have to kind of go away and sort of recharge, you know, like the lizard that runs under the rock. And under my umbrella, there does seem to be this need to, like, either to take shelter or to have shelter, to sometimes, you know, kind of go and seek a little bit of refuge, either in other people or just away from crowds. That's what I kind of feel, in order to sort of to recharge and not to sort of feel too buoyed around by the, you know, the energies that they tend to sort of like pick up. And as I said, it could be with you know, so much red here that both people have strong root chakra issues. So this can sometimes relate to like past karma, baggage we need to drop, or where we can get a little bit stuck or stagnant and need to sort of push through, you know, our kind of comfort zone where we may hold ourselves back. And then with the Phoenix person, this energy does represent the root chakra itself, and it's sort of, Kim Krans just defines it very much along kind of yogic lines, but of course, you know, it's kind of open to interpretation and, you know, kind of interpret it as you see fit. But you know, I do think it's interesting that we have a long way home here, and I do get the strong sense of like roots and family are, you know, very important to the Phoenix person. That material security is incredibly, it's something that they value highly. So it could be that they came from a background where, you know, that was in short supply, and so survival is really important to them on some level. It could be that they have overcome a difficult illness at some point, like a life-threatening illness. But there's just a sense too with the Phoenix of like rising from the ashes. So there's a strong desire to grow and to perhaps venture beyond the 3D and their kind of known environment. And it could be because of the lizard person who is sort of awakening in them a sense of adventure. Because, you know, if we look at this card, A Long Way Home, this elephant is traveling with his home kind of with him, and there is an anchor here. So it's interesting that I was talking about, you know, kind of roots and family, so like feeling anchored or feeling secure, or something to do with home or memories like nostalgia. I mean, it could also be that these two people knew each other like growing up as children, or maybe they came from a similar background, something like that. They share a similar background. But, you know, A Long Way Home suggests that, you know, this elephant is on adventures, you know, almost like a caravan, where they are taking like a mobile home with them. And it's interesting that the home looks a little bit like the Taj Mahal if you look a little bit closer. And there may also be a link to India with you know, a lot of this imagery reminds me of India. So you know, it's home, and sometimes, you know, how we can kind of say home is where the heart is, and that saying may be kind of relevant in this situation, that even though these two people may be far from home or where they grew up, and it may be that on some level, when they are together, it doesn't matter where they are, you know, if they're traveling and that kind of thing, that they feel somehow, you know, home. So that's really interesting. But let's get into the tarot and see what else we can discover. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some tarot, and then I'm going to clarify a few things, and then after that we'll do some messages, you know, kind of messages from each other, and we'll finish off with some oracle cards and pull some name tiles. So lots to look forward to, and let's see what comes through. Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. All these readings have been quite distinctive, but at the same time, it is very clear from all three that there are some group themes coming through for the collective, and they do seem to have a lot to do with the energy we've just come out of. you know, that Saturn-Uranus square, which I think did bring up a lot of fear of change and some discomfort for a lot of people. And then those retrogrades of Venus and Mercury, which I think also brought up a lot of stuff around maybe where we get stuck in terms of certain patterns or ways of perceiving things, how we communicate with other people, and also relationship dynamics that may have needed a little bit of an overhaul, or, you know, where we just need to get a little bit more clear about our values, what we really value in relationships, and also what we value in ourselves, you know, what we have to kind of offer. So interesting, very interesting. Okay, so I'm going to do a Celtic cross this time rather than my usual style of reading, so that we can keep the, you know, we can also first of all get a timeline, a sense of a timeline, you know, as far as these two people, you know, what's kind of happened in the situation, but also as a way of just keeping the focus on the relationship itself, you know, rather than the two parties. But I will pull some cards for each person, and as I say, we will clarify with things like message cards and that kind of thing. So I'm using the solar deck to just pull a card for each person. So I'm going to do the Phoenix on the left, and I will do the Lizard person on the right. I can see I need to push these back a little bit so that all the cards are in the frame. Okay, so all right, let's have a look at the timeline. Interesting, 2 queens. 4 wands in reverse. Okay, let's look at this before we kind of get any further. So in terms of the timeline, as I say, it's interesting they've got 2 queens. So there's a strong sense of like an emphasis on kind of feminine energy. Which is interesting, because in some of the previous readings we had a lot of emphasis on the masculine energy. And given that, you know, we've got this Venus-Mars conjunction, you know, obviously we are trying to kind of balance these 2 energies out. Yes, so in the sort of the recent past, I feel like there was quite a sort of like a strong, sexy start to this connection, or that one person or both people found the other one very attractive physically. You know, they thought that they were really kind of good looking, and there was a strong sort of physical attraction. And then, like in terms of present energy, something happened to sort of create some doubt. This card is the Moon combined with the 8 of Cups, because it's the playing card system. And so, I mean, here we have a strong sense of like either disappointment or somebody walking away from a situation. So there may have been like a false start between these 2 people, or it could be that there was confusion in the situation, because we do have the Ace of Wands at the bottom here. I mean, the Ace of Swords, and that can often sort of indicate a need for clarity and for need for people to sort of speak their truth, and for a situation that might have been a little bit murky to become a bit clearer. And sometimes that murkiness can be caused by fears like projections and you know, being triggered, that kind of thing, which can sometimes cloud our judgment. Because then we, you know, at the top here we've got the 4 of Wands in reverse, and so this suggests that, again, that there was like some kind of you know, that a situation had the potential to progress to like a level of commitment, but for whatever reason it didn't happen. There was some kind of hiatus, or, you know, kind of break here, possibly caused by, you know, some some emotional stuff kind of coming up. And you know, we did have that theme when we looked at the initial cards about karmic baggage that needs to be worked through. So it could be that this is what the crux of the matter is, that there's a need to sort of work through possibly some subconscious fears, a bit of projection, sort of some stuff from the past that's been triggered as a result of this connection. Yes, that kind of thing. Because then we move to the Queen of Pentacles, who's much more earthy than the Queen of Wands. So the Queen of Wands is fire energy and the Queen of Pentacles is earth. So we move to much more grounded, solid, centered energy, which is good, because it does suggest that in the near future that things will settle down a little bit more if they have been a little bit chaotic or tumultuous on some level. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The lizard person gets the Chariot, but it's also, this card is also the Seven of Swords, which can be like someone who runs away, who self-sabotages, who kind of does a bit of a swerve, or who is a little bit strategic, you know, in terms of their approach. And of course that's quite different to the Chariot, which is all about forward movement and sometimes travel, but it does require a balancing or a sort of harmonizing the two horses in order to drive the carriage forward. So it could be on some level that there needs to be a kind of a return to internal balance in order for the situation to move forward, or for this person to be able to re-engage in the situation if they indeed are the one who ran away. The Phoenix person is represented by Temperance and the Two of Cups. So this is beautiful energy. So this person really feels as though they've met their soulmate, their counterpart, but they also seem to realize with Temperance here that there is a need for balancing. You know, Temperance is about balancing fire and water, so it's very alchemical, and you know, we've got the same, you know, this dual energy also in the other person. So it does seem as though on some level these two people are resolving or balancing or healing something possibly from their past, which tends to put them into like a fearful or a triggered state, and that this can sometimes affect their ability to fully participate and commit, you know, in relationships. Yeah, interesting. We will get more information. Wow, this is so interesting. So kind of one of the things that these, or like the kind of core issue here that both people may be unaware of is their attitudes either to commitment or to like their beliefs. So there may be some limiting beliefs here that have led to a kind of a triggering, and you know, or it could be that, how can I put this? That they're kind of that their approach to I do feel that both of them are quite traditional people, so I do think they both value traditional forms of commitment like marriage, but it could be that one person is slightly more stubborn or conservative than the other one, or there might be some commitment phobia here with the Seven of Swords. We'll find out more. Let's see what else we have. So yes, I mean, if we look at the hopes position, we do see that there does seem to be within both people this sense that, first of all, the connection is destined, because this is also the Wheel of Fortune. So much like the Phoenix person, both of them may feel that there is this potential here for long-term commitment. You know, the Ten of Cups is often associated with marriage, so echoing this Hierophant here. But in order for things to move forward with this Eight of Wands, which I do think is possible, it just seems as though these two people need to get on the same page, because we've got the Two of Wands in reverse. So it could be that, you know, it's similar to the Ace of Swords here, in that these two people may need to kind of come together and have a heart-to-heart conversation, an honest, open conversation about what their expectations are in terms of the relationship, and also maybe just voice their fears, because it could be that they just, one or both parties may need some reassurance, you know, with this moon card and the Seven of Swords. They may just have got a little bit spooked for whatever reason, possibly due to a misunderstanding. And, you know, it could be that just through communication and getting clarity about the way forward, that things can, you know, can kind of progress nicely. Let's find out more, though, with the tarot. So we'll start with the moon. We'll find out about this Eight of Cups and the moon. What is this? Please clarify this Eight of Cups energy. Okay, well, that clearly wants to come out. Okay. Yeah. So it does seem to be about essentially like a decision to make things happen, but that this means resolving in an internal ambivalence and emotional, like, fears coming up. So I do feel as though this moon and this Eight of Cups is about somebody walking away, or a situation kind of being clouded by fears and internal ambivalence. Yeah. Okay, let's just clarify that Four of Wands in reverse. I'm going to cut it in half. Okay. Yeah, so again, ambivalence. Interesting. So it seems as though this Four of Wands is that it seems to relate to the fact that one party, possibly this lizard person, they may kind of get wobbles every now and again. They may sort of like have wobbles, and it may have to do with that lizard energy, where they get a little bit overwhelmed being in kind of in public or in group situations, or you know, they have periods of extroversion, but they also need to retreat in order to recharge. So there could be, you know, a highly sensitive person who gets overstimulated by their environment. They could also suffer from they could be on the autistic spectrum. And if they don't get time on their own, then they can become a little bit sort of like drained and depressed, and it can also lead to like seeing the glass half empty, if you like. Sometimes this can be about ambivalence, or just trying to work out how to incorporate somebody into your everyday routines, that kind of thing. So as I say, it could be that one or both parties does need a lot of downtime in order to sort of recharge, and they're kind of wondering how they can be in a relationship without seeming selfish or unfair. So that could be what the wobble is about. Kind of wondering whether they are relationship material, or whether the other person would accept them, or their kind of quirks, if you like. I think is possibly, you know, one of the issues here with you know, particularly with the moon, that there's a lot of fear about not being accepted. But let's clarify this Chariot, Seven of Swords. So what is the Seven of Swords here, please? Interesting. Queen of Wands again. Okay. So I mean, as far as the lizard person is concerned, it does seem as though they are, to an extent, when they're in a good place, they are the Queen of Wands. They are very confident, they're quite, they have a very sort of sunny outlook and disposition, that they're quite vivacious and possibly physically attractive. It also speaks of, internal confidence, and that when this is kind of happening, that they do see, the future in a very positive way, and it does look to me as though they see the enormous potential with this Phoenix person, that they do feel they could be quite attracted to the Phoenix person. They may also, as I say, see a bright future with this Phoenix person, but there could be an element too where they expect the Phoenix person to come towards them. Because the Three of Wands very often is somebody who's waiting for their ships to kind of come in. So it could be that there's some kind of timing issue here. It could also be that they are quite traditional and in their feminine energy, so they expect the other person to embody kind of masculine energy and to do all the kind of like the pursuing, if you like. But again, we've got this Eight of Cups, which we had repeated in the middle card. So it does seem as though on some level they've either had to walk away, or they feel somehow a little bit let down or disappointed in the way things have kind of turned out. And as I say, it could just be because things haven't kind of gone according to their idea of the way, their expectations, or it could just be that maybe they don't. Maybe they feel the situation hasn't progressed in the way that they would have liked. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, let's find out a bit more about this this Two of Wands in reverse, because that might clarify things a little bit. I mean, Eight of Cups can also be about a journey, that you kind of feel as though, because we had a lot of that in the initial cards, that this person, or that there may be a need for the two people together to kind of go on a journey, like a healing journey or a journey of discovery, and that this, the path of true love didn't always run smooth, that kind of story, where both people need to kind of grow in the connection, and that's part of the reason why these two people have kind of come together. Interesting. Wow. Now that's pretty cool. So we've got another iteration of the Ten of Cups here, and we've also got the Ten of Pentacles. So two tens, which is incredible. This is, like reaching this sort of the pinnacle. It's also both about like long-term commitments, and it does seem to be about doing the work. So that's what I'm feeling with this journey card, with this Eight of Cups, that these two people are on a kind of journey of growth and discovery, and that the two people together are kind of spurring each other on to kind of break out of their comfort zone of habits that might have kind of kept them stuck and stopped them from growing. It made them, there's a strong need to feel safe, I feel, with both people, but that can stop us from really growing and reaching our potential, and also kind of moving into relationships that are a little bit more mature, that are kind of grown up. So I really feel as though if these two people decide to, with that Two of Wands in reverse, which is about making a decision, making a choice, if they choose to, that this connection could really provide some long-term happiness and stability for both of them. But it is going to be a journey of discovery and growth, and a kind of gradual unfolding of, rather than a sort of, clap eyes across the room and everything is just dandy and there's no problems to overcome, that kind of thing. So it's very much about doing the work, about mastering certain relationship skills that maybe neither of them are familiar with or have had to kind of master, but that this will really pay off in the long term, because as I say, these are two really fantastic cards. So almost fulfilling the potential of that Four of Wands, like flipping it around so that it's upright, which is all about you know, like the harvest commitment, a really lovely connection that's both exciting, like that south, this card that we had, this card of adventure, but it's also very stable. So there does seem to be enormous potential here. So let's get some, first of all, some, before we get into advice, let's get some messages from each person using the Hermit Tarot. As I say, there does seem to be a strong theme here about feeling safe, feeling secure, and having to sort of trade that off against the desire for adventure and to grow and to move into unfamiliar territory, which is what the relationship seems to be encouraging both people to do. I want to get you drunk. Interesting cards. Wow. Okay. Not what I expected. So I guess it's not all roses from the Two of Cups person. It might also be with that Knight of Wands that they also get triggered. Like when the one person gets triggered, then the other person mirrors and gets triggered. And so that's also might be what kind of causes the connection to have a few wobbles. Words do hurt. Interesting. Wow. So yeah, I mean, let's start with this, with the Phoenix person. I want to get you drunk. So it does seem to me as though they feel as though the lizard person needs to kind of loosen up or lighten up a little bit. And it may just be that they don't really understand, you know, what it's like to be somebody who's very introverted or shy, or, you know, not suffer from, but be a highly sensitive person, that kind of thing. But I think just kind of wanting to get the person to loosen up a little bit. And seek professional advice. Again, this could be because they don't really understand the other person's condition or kind of disposition, and so they may think that there's something slightly wrong with the other person when in fact it's just a misunderstanding or a lack of education about what it's like to be highly sensitive, or, you know, to have Asperger's, or say be on the spectrum possibly. And I can't even look at you right now. So it does feel as though this person is hurt, and it could be because the other person ran away, and, you know, so that there's a little bit of like anger or resentment that is kind of being evoked in the Phoenix person. But I mean, it's interesting when we look at the lizard person. So words do hurt. So this Phoenix person does seem to have said something to upset the lizard person. It could just be because of this misunderstanding, like seek professional advice. They could have been a little bit dispensing with unsolicited advice, or perhaps being a little bit preachy, possibly coming from a place of ignorance. But this person does seem to be a little bit hurt. And then, you are so beautiful, why do you need me? So I do get a strong sense that with the lizard person there's some inadequacy, the sense of inadequacy, that they feel like maybe maybe they see the Phoenix person as being so beautiful, like, why do you need me? They could see them as the Queen of Wands, and then one cup, which is beautiful. So definitely want a fresh start with the other party, or for things to kind of grow and blossom. This is like the Ace of Cups, so it could also be about self-love, that the lizard individual just also needs to accept themselves and accept their foibles and quirks, and with that acceptance comes, this more grounded, self-assured energy, which in turn will be reflected in the way that the other person then treats them, because they are coming from a place of self-confidence and not of apology, for being like different. Okay, let's get some advice from the Wisdom of the Oracle deck. interesting readings. It just seems as though at the moment, as I say, the path to true love never did run smooth, and there are a few bumps that need to be negotiated before we can get to that really lovely Venus-Mars energy, which starts kind of mid-February. I think we'll notice a shift when we start to get to that Leo full moon. Okay, so one card for the Phoenix person, one card for the Lizard person, and then one for the connection itself. Wow, nice. Interesting. So let's start with the Lizard person. I mean, mending does suggest that there is a need for to either to do what they can to reach out and mend the connection with the other person, but I think it's also very much about self-love and kind of mending whatever it is in themselves that gets triggered when when it comes to relationships. And then with the Phoenix person, I mean, co-create is all about working with others, so collaborating, seeing things as being not just about one person, say, rescuing the other one or dispensing with advice, but kind of coming from a position of equality, so both people contributing equally and sort of being heard and seen in the relationship, kind of equally. But it does look as though they are willing to work with the Lizard person to sort of make things better. And then this is interesting, not for you. So not for you is very much about not trying to force things, and also just not accepting that what's meant for you won't pass you by. So not kind of coming from a position of fear where you kind of think, oh my god, I have to like hang on to a situation for dear life because I don't really know what else there is there, whether there'll be anybody else out there for me or whatever, but just kind of letting go of what's not for you. And that could also be about letting go of fear and sort of realizing that fear is just a mirage, and it isn't necessarily all that there is, or the only thing that ever will be. And kind of letting that go and moving into a place of flow, so that what is meant for you will improve or kind of come your way. So I get the strong feeling that it's a question of both of these people loosening their grip a little bit, kind of unclenching, if you like, and sort of taking a philosophical approach, of kind of saying, well, if this is meant to be, it'll be, and if it isn't, then it won't, and I'm not going to like turn myself inside out to be something that I'm not, but at the same time just sort of allowing things to flow, and that things will either then resolve themselves and improve, or fade away, and in which case it'll be a case of making room for the right person to kind of come in, if indeed this is not really for them. It could be that on some level the Lizard person isn't sure whether this connection is right for them, and that may be why subconsciously they've kind of run away, or kind of tried to escape, just kind of sneak off, avoid the other person. Or it might just be an aspect of the situation that they feel needs to fall away. It may be that there's this dynamic within the connection that they feel is unhealthy, and that by walking away and then just, that hopefully that situation will deteriorate, and then things will change and move in a more positive direction. Because as I say, we do have this potential here with the outcome for things to end really well. but it could just be that there's some aspect or dynamic in a relationship that needs to fall away, and that could be this, you know, this fear and triggering that we see with the moon and the Ace of Cups. Okay, so let's get some final advice from the universe has your back. Interesting. So it says the universe works fast when I'm having fun. So it does seem as though, as I say, these two people, particularly the lizard person, needs to relax a little bit, and it seems as though instinctively the Phoenix person knows this. With I want to get you drunk. So it could just be that, as I say, that things have been a bit tense or hairy or stressful recently, or just that, you know, one party needed to kind of go away and kind of rest, or like recharge on some level, or just heal something within themselves. But that things have the potential to move in a quite a positive direction if both people move into much more joyful and fun energy, and just unclench a little bit, you know, just be a little bit more playful and open, and to see where things could possibly head. So kind of allowing themselves to come out of their comfort zone, not being so worried about getting like guarantees of security from the other person, but just sort of like adopting a kind of like a wait and see attitude, and that, you know, one or both parties might be pleasantly surprised at where things kind of end up. So that's really nice, actually. So let's end with some word tiles. Right, what do we got? So we've got a G, we've got a C, we've got an A, we've got an L, a B, a P, a K, a U, and an E. So that may be relevant in terms of people's initials, or a place that's of significance, or some kind of keyword, that kind of thing. Yeah, interesting. So very interesting readings, guys. Do let me know if this has resonated, and, you know, if you've enjoyed it. If you don't feel that, you know, this was 100% for you, do try one of the other piles, because sometimes, you know, we can get a much better reading the second time round. But yeah, I do hope that it's been helpful, and that the Venus-Mars conjunctions bring you everything you hope for. Happy Valentine's Day for the 14th, and all the very best.